Hello everyone, Silent here and welcome back to another Bedrock Edition tutorial. Today I'll be showing you how to build an incredibly simple, cheap, and easy to build villager-powered crop farm in your Bedrock Edition worlds. This thing is basically as simple and as cheap as you can get it, however it is still very efficient. Each layer of this farm can produce up to around 1500 drops per hour, depending on what you want to farm with it. This farm can be used for potatoes, carrots, beets, and even bread, however it can't really be used for wheat. I'll talk more about that later. This farm doesn't use any redstone whatsoever, and it only requires 2 villagers per layer. There is no funky business going on with the villagers or villages. You literally just plop them in there, and then they get to work farming you a bunch of crops. You can stack this design directly on top of one another as high up as you want to. You could have 1,000 of these in one area if you felt like it, and they would all produce a ton of crops for you. That being said, you only need to build a single layer in your world if you want to, and then later on you can add more layers if you want more or different crops. It's a very simple and very flexible design that I think you'll enjoy a lot in your worlds. Let's take a closer look at this farm in detail, shall we? As you can see, it is actually an incredibly simple build, like I've been saying this entire video so far. So all we have here is a 16 by 16 area with a whole bunch of crops planted in the middle, some light sources so that they grow at all times of the day, and then of course there's some waterlogged blocks below those for the moisturization of all the crops. We then have a farmer villager who runs around and harvests all of the fully grown crops, and he will just pick those up into his inventory. Now there's another villager over here hiding in the corner behind these hoppers. Whenever the farmer villager has enough food in its inventory, it'll try and share some of that with the other villager. This one has absolutely nothing in its inventory, so it is considered a hungry villager, and this dude is super nice and he tries to share some food with that. However, we steal that food right out of thin air into our hoppers here, and then simply put that into a chest. As you can see, this one right here has wheat, so we're going to be getting a ton of bread from this farm, and also a bunch of seeds as well, which you may need for other projects, or you can simply throw those into a composter for a little bit of bone meal. Now, of course, this also works with beetroots as well. As you can see, you get a bunch of beetroots and many seeds. Naturally, this also works for the carrots too. As you can see, we just have loads of those, and of course, it works for potatoes. You will likely want to farm potatoes because, of course, you can turn these into cooked potatoes, and that is a pretty solid source of food. On screen right now, you can see the rates for each different type of crop, and that's really all there is to it. And this is what a single layer of the farm looks like. As you can see, it is literally just a square with 8 different light sources. That way, all the crops along all the edges will fully grow, and that's literally it. As you'll notice, there is not a single workstation, bed, bell, or anything of the sorts. In fact, there's not even a village. As I mentioned in the intro, this farm is not really intended for getting you any wheat. As you can see, this layer here is wheat. However, he's picking up all the wheat and turning it into bread, so you will never get a single piece of wheat from a wheat farm of this type. If you want to get a bunch of wheat in your world, I would recommend getting yourself a micro farm and a good source of bone meal. If you feel like it, you can compost all of the unnecessary crops that you get from these farms in a composter, and that will of course give you a little bit of bone meal to power a micro farm for. A micro farm for wheat is going to be a significantly better investment of time than a villager crop farm specifically designed for wheat. These guys just aren't really made for it, and it's not really efficient to get wheat from one of these types. So that's basically everything that you need to know about this villager crop farm. However, there is a couple of warnings and different things that you should know about before building this. First of all, farmer villagers do not work at nighttime, so if we go ahead and set the time to night, you will see that this guy is not going to harvest or plant any crops. However, he will still throw crops to the hungry villager in the corner, so you can still get some items out of this during the night. Of course, all of the crops will still grow during the nighttime, which we can simulate by turning up the random tick speed. And then, of course, once it becomes daytime once more, then your villager will go about harvesting absolutely everything. And that means that he's going to have a ton of items to dump into your chest because he just got done harvesting an entire crop field of items. So really, you're going to get a bunch of items out of it regardless, even if you don't sleep through the night or if you're on a server and you can't sleep. So it's not really that big of an issue that it doesn't work during the nighttime, but it is something that you should be aware of. Furthermore, this thing should be fairly unbreakable. I've tested it very thoroughly, and this guy in the corner should never pick up any food. If he picks up food, he will no longer be a hungry villager, and the farm will cease working because that guy's not going to be throwing any items into your hoppers. If that does happen, then all you need to do is kill this guy and replace him with a fresh, hungry villager with nothing in their inventory. However, that should never happen. They should never be able to pick up items. Even if the hoppers get completely backed up and there's items sitting on top of the hoppers, the villagers will not pick them up for reasons. So you should be perfectly safe to just build this farm and forget about it. And one final note, just because this farm doesn't use any beds or workstations and it doesn't technically have a village, does not mean that villages will not affect this. If you happen to notice that your farmer villager is running around sporadically and kind of crazily and not harvesting any of the crops or anything like that, that means that he's likely trying to find his way to the nearest village. So for example, we have a village all the way over there. If this guy starts running around all crazy, it means that he's outside the village bounds. The easiest way to fix this is simply to add a bed outside of the farm. He will link to it and unlink from it and do silly things with it, but that should fix your farm. If you build a very, very tall version, you may need a bed like right in the middle of the farm. For example, if we place a bed down here at the bottom, that's not really going to help the villagers up at the top here, so you might need to put a bed near the center layer. It's kind of silly, but overall, it's an incredibly easy fix. Just place down a bed pretty much anywhere. They do not need to be able to sleep in it, and they'll be perfectly fine. And let's hop into the tutorial, shall we? In case you're interested, there's a full materials list down in the description of the video. For your convenience, you can check that out and know absolutely everything that you need to build this. I'm going to be building this as if you are going to stack the layers, so everything that I do is going to be the same no matter how many layers you make. You're going to need a 16 by 16 area for this build, and you will need to chunk align this area. If you do not know how to chunk align or what chunk aligning is, check out the video in the upper right or down in the description. It is all about how to chunk align your farms and how to find chunk borders in your world. You need to chunk align this farm, that way none of your villagers accidentally get deleted on chunk borders, which is a very common occurrence if you do not chunk align your farms. The first thing that you need to do is build yourself a 14 by 14 area of either grass or dirt, and that's what this little area right here is. You can put a border around your dirt if you want to, however, it is not necessary. It's simply here for the tutorial. So this little grass square right here is 14 blocks wide and 14 deep. We're going to go over to one of the corners and count in by 5 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Break out that block and place in ourselves a water source. You want to do that for all 4 corners of the farm. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then just keep doing that all the way around. Since we're on the ground layer, all we need is a single piece of water. However, if you're building multiple layers going upwards, then you will need to place a slab down in the hole. So for example, if you're building a layer up here, you'll need to place in your slab and then place in your water. That way the water does not flow downwards into the lower levels and flood all the crops and everything like that. So make sure you have a waterlogged slab if you're building multiple layers up in the air. What you want to do from here is place a light emitting block above each one of these water sources, just like so. It's of course easiest to place in if there's already a slab in there, and that's really all there is to it. That is going to light up all of your crops. You also want to put a light emitting block in each one of the corners of your build as well, just to make sure all the crops on the edges can also get light. Now that we have all the corners marked out, go ahead and put in yourself a 2-block tall wall going all the way around the build. This can be built out of pretty much any type of block that you like. However, I will be using glass because it does look the nicest and you will be able to see into your farm. Being able to see into your farm is incredibly useful. That way you can check on your villagers, make sure they're doing all right, say hello to them, and make sure they did not turn into a zombie. Once you have all of this installed, simply go ahead and grab yourself a hoe and till all the dirt into farmland. And now we're going to install the little area for your side villager. So go 2 blocks in from the edge edge right here and place down yourself a double chest for item collection. We're gonna place in a hopper behind that, another hopper right here, and a hopper to the side like so. 2 fences right there, and then simply go ahead and put some blocks above those like so. That way the villagers can't hop up onto the hoppers and get where they shouldn't. The fences will ensure that the farmer villager never throws food too far, and that way it doesn't land on this block and here, and ensures that all food goes directly on top of the hopper. And now is the point where you would need to get yourself 2 villagers per layer of your farm. What I would recommend doing is building my super small, super cheap and easy villager breeder that I released a while ago. What you need to do is you need to make sure that it is a clean villager breeder. That means that none of the babies will ever pick up any food. If you do not have a clean villager breeder, you will not have villagers with empty inventories, they will not be hungry, and this farm will not work. So make sure you are getting the proper type of villager into this farm, and it needs to have a completely empty inventory. If you don't feel like doing a villager breeder, if you cure a zombie villager, that villager will have an empty inventory. So if you find a zombie villager out in the wild, you can cure that, and that'll work just fine. And this is the point where you would grab some villagers from your villager breeder or from your zombie villager curing and put them into the farm. I would recommend using minecarts, as is the easiest way to transport villagers. Simply put one in this corner right here, and then go ahead and put a block above his head, and then put another villager out here in the main area, and this guy will eventually become your farmer. You want to make sure that both of the villagers that you use do not have a profession. That is going to make the build process the easiest. So now what you need to do is you need to assign a profession to each one of these. We're going to place down one bed to create a village. You will see some green particles above that bed, which means that someone has linked to it and a village has been created, and there we go, we now have a village. You then want to place down a composter and hope that this guy over here links to it. You may need to place down several composters if you have a lot of villagers in the area, or if you have multiple layers of this farm. Once the guy in the main area links to the composter, simply trade with him one time or more if you feel like it, and that will lock in his profession. He will never change professions now as long as the game is working properly, and then you can go ahead and destroy all of your composters. If you're planning on building multiple layers of your crop farm, I would recommend giving this guy in the corner a junk profession as well. So simply grab yourself some fletching tables, or really whatever you want. It doesn't matter what profession this guy is, as long as he is not a farmer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and place down a couple of fletching tables. That way, hopefully he links to one of them. So trade with him at least one time. That will lock in his profession and then break all of these fletching tables. What that'll do is that'll prevent him from ever linking to a composter, so as you're building more layers going up and up, you don't need to place down like 1,000 different composters because your guys in the corners are linking to them. Only the main farmers will link to them, and overall this is going to help the building process going forward if you plan on building a lot of layers. Of course, don't forget that you can just remove your bed here. You do not need that. It is not necessary. And now it is time to activate your crop farm. This is a really easy thing to do. You just got to throw this guy some crops of your choice. If you want a potato farm, throw him some potatoes. If you want a carrot farm, throw him some carrots. If you want a beetroot farm for some weird reason, throw him beetroot seeds. And if you want a bread farm, throw him some seeds. He will need 4 stacks of crops to plant in this entire area. If you want to wait a little while, or if you don't have that many, then you can just throw him like 20 crops, or maybe just 1 stack, whatever works for you. It's very important that you do not mix and match crops per layer. You should only have 1 crop type per layer. If you mix and match, it's gonna mess up over time and it's gonna break itself, or your villager's inventory could get completely filled up with seeds and not be able to pick up any food, and then your farm breaks and it'll be a hassle. So only use 1 food type per layer. So I'm just gonna throw that guy some potatoes real quick, and he will go ahead and plant in the entire farm. And now for some finishing touches of the farm. You want to make sure this thing is as safe as it possibly can be, so make sure there is at least a 2 tall wall going all the way around like we already installed, but make sure the corners are also installed as well. If you don't have the corner blocks installed, zombies can hit through the corner and kill your villagers. If you don't have a block right here, zombies can just hop right into the farm, so make sure you got those blocks installed. You also want to possibly install a roof above the farm, especially if you're building building out in the open. Put a lower half slab roof above the entirety of the farm. That way lightning does not strike your villagers. So make sure you put that on the very top layer of your farm if you're going to be stacking these things like we have over there. Regardless of if you have a roof or not, you want to make sure the villagers cannot stand on top of your pumpkins, because if they do that, they will fall off the pumpkins and then turn your farmland into dirt, which is not a very good thing. So you want to put a block 2 blocks above the pumpkin, and this will make sure the villager still has line of sight to the hungry villager. It would not have line of sight if there was a block right there, so put 1 2 blocks above the pumpkin. Make sure they're safe from zombies, make sure they're safe from lightning, and make sure they are safe from themselves. If you ever want to expand the farm upwards, it is of course incredibly simple. The next layer of dirt simply goes right here. That way there is a 2 block gap below it. You install the entire 14 by 14 of dirt, put in the slabs, put in the water sources, put in the walls, and basically just follow the entire tutorial as I've done up to this point. It really is as simple as that. And just one last thing for those of you who want to stack your farms, this is how you can connect all the layers together with a storage line. Basically have all of your hopper lines go to the side, and then basically just a hopper line pointing downwards. You can replace every other hopper with a chest or a dropper or something like that, and that'll make sure that it's, you know, a lot cheaper. And also there's going to be a lot more additional storage if this thing does ever back up. Keep in mind, you can only tie together a maximum of 6 layers doing this type of line. Hoppers can only transfer 9,000 items per hour, so if you have more than 6 layers, your hoppers are going to get backed up guaranteed. And that's going to do it for today's tutorial. I hope that you have enjoyed. Of course, if you have, make sure to leave a like on the video. It significantly helps out the video and the channel a ton. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about this farm or this tutorial, then let me know in the comment section down below. I'm always trying to help you guys out as best as I possibly can. And if you want to see more tutorials like this on the channel, then of course consider subscribing so that you don't miss any. Otherwise, I'll see you guys down in the comment section and in the next one. And then there was silence.